The clang of the prison doors echoed in my ears, but it wasn't the sound of freedom. No, that was just the beginning. The door slammed shut behind me with a finality that made my chest tighten. The cold metal left a bitter taste in my mouth. Like the remnants of a dream fading with the rising sun that it didn't matter that I was free. What mattered now was survival, that I had been a prisoner for years, longer than I cared to admit, locked away in a place where time crawled and men rotted from the inside out. The guards knew my face, the other inmates knew my name, but none of that mattered now. The jungle didn't care about who I was. It didn't care about the blood on my hands or the years I spent behind bars. It was alive. A living, breathing thing, full of venom and death. The air hit me like a slap, thick with humidity and the scent of earth, decay, and something far more primal. The trees towered over me, their massive trunks twisted and gnarled like the hands of some ancient god trying to claw at the sky. The foliage was thick, heavy, making the world feel like it was closing in. I didn't have time to admire the scenery. I could hear voices behind me now, shouts, the crackle of radios. I didn't need to look back to know the guards were coming. The escape had been planned down to the smallest detail, but plans had a funny way of collapsing under pressure. I had no map, no compass, just the instinct to run and keep running. One step ahead. That's all it took. That I sprinted deeper into the jungle, branches slapping against my face and hands, vines snaring at my legs like invisible hands trying to pull me back into the earth. My breath came in short, ragged bursts, my muscles screaming in protest. But there was no stopping now. The guards would be on me soon. I had maybe 10-20 minutes before they caught up, and there was no way I was going back. The jungle swallowed me whole. That I didn't know what awaited me here, but I could feel the eyes of unseen creatures watching from the shadows. The air was thick with the hum of insects, and the occasional screech of some bird or animal echoed in the distance. But it was the silence that bothered me most. It wasn't the kind of silence that brought peace. No, it was the kind of silence that made you feel like something was lurking, just beyond the edge of your vision. That I kept moving. After what felt like hours, I finally slowed, my lungs burning, my legs threatening to give out beneath me. I had to get my bearings. I had to find shelter. But as I paused to catch my breath, the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. Something was wrong. It was too quiet now, almost suffocating. Suddenly, there was a rustle in the bushes to my left. I froze. My heart hammered in my chest. My hands were slick with sweat, my body frozen, poised like an animal waiting to see if the predator was going to strike. The noise came again, closer this time. Then, out of the dense underbrush, a figure emerged. My breath caught in my throat. The person was tall, their skin dark as the shadows, their eyes piercing and wild. They moved with the kind of fluidity that made it clear they knew the jungle better than I ever could. And in their hand, they held a long, gleaming knife. For a long moment, neither of us moved. I couldn't even bring myself to speak. Every instinct in me screamed to run, to fight, to do something, but all I could do was stand there, watching this stranger who seemed as much a part of the jungle as the trees themselves. Finally, the figure spoke, their voice low and guttural, barely a whisper beneath the noise of the jungle. "You're not supposed to be here." It was a statement, not a question. I opened my mouth to respond, but the words stuck in my throat. I wasn't supposed to be here? What did they mean? Before I could react, the person lunged, but not at me. They thrust the knife into the earth, the blade sinking into the rich soil with a sickening sound. "You don't belong in the jungle, outsider," they said again, their voice dark with a strange mix of contempt and pity. "But you might survive if you're lucky." I opened my mouth, but again, no words came. The silence between us stretched on. Then, just as quickly as the figure had appeared, they vanished back into the jungle, leaving me standing there, alone, with nothing but the sound of my racing heart to keep me company. I had no idea what kind of hell I'd just stepped into, but it was already clear. The jungle wasn't just a place. It was a living nightmare, a prison far worse than the one I'd just escaped. And I was its newest inmate. That I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The jungle around me was alive, breathing with an eerie vitality. There was no silence here, not really. Even the trees whispered in the wind, their branches creaking and groaning like some ancient beast stretching its limbs. The air felt thick with the promise of something dangerous lurking just beyond my vision. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves made my heart pound harder, my pulse quickening with each step I took that I tried to move quietly, but it was impossible. The undergrowth was dense, thick vines and tangled roots tripping me up with every other step. Sweat poured from my skin, mixing with the muck and grime of the jungle floor. The humidity was unbearable, like a wet, suffocating blanket wrapped tight around my chest. I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt dry. Still, I pressed on. There was no turning back now. The guards were far behind, I hoped, but in this place I couldn't trust that. Time was a blur. In the prison, I could count the days by the food trays that slid under my cell door, but here, in the wilderness, everything felt timeless. The minutes bled into hours, the hours into an endless stretch of uncertainty. Uncertainty that I needed to find shelter, water, food. I needed to survive. But I couldn't shake the strange feeling that the jungle was shifting, like the very earth beneath my feet was alive, restless, watching me. I wasn't alone as I stumbled through a narrow gap between two towering trees. A sharp screech pierced the air, sending a wave of panic crashing through me. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. The noise came again, louder this time. It was almost human, but not quite. A strange, guttural cry, a warning or a challenge. I spun around, my heart hammering in my chest, eyes searching the trees. Nothing. Nothing except the shadows and the thick vines that curled like fingers reaching out to drag me deeper into the heart of the jungle. I shook my head, trying to calm myself. The jungle was full of sounds, natural sounds. Birds, insects, maybe some kind of animal, but none of them were interested in me. They were just noise. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. I needed to keep moving. I stumbled on for what felt like hours. The heat was unbearable. My clothes clung to my skin, drenched with sweat. My mouth was dry, my stomach gnawing at me, screaming for food and water. I hadn't realized how much I'd been depending on the adrenaline from my escape to keep me going. But now it was wearing thin. I needed to find water. Fast. Without it, I wouldn't last the day. There was no sign of any streams or rivers. The trees and foliage were too thick, the ground too uneven. But just as I began to think I might have to push on further, I saw something through the trees ahead. A faint glimmer, a hint of blue that stood out against the green sea of the jungle. Hope surged in my chest, but it was tempered with caution. The last thing I needed was to walk into some predator's territory or a trap set by the locals. I had no idea who or what inhabited this place, but I could feel their presence. Heavy, like a shadow always at the edge of my vision. I approached carefully, my footsteps silent against the forest floor, and as I neared the clearing, I saw what I had hoped for. A small stream, its water clear and running fast over rocks. The sound of the water was a symphony to my parched throat. Without hesitation, I knelt at the edge of the stream, cupping my hands to drink. The coolness of the water was a shock, but a welcome one. It flowed down my throat like life itself, and I drank greedily, not caring if I looked like a desperate animal. My body was screaming for sustenance as I stood, wiping my mouth. Something caught my eye, movement across the stream. For a split second, I thought it was just the wind rustling the trees, but then I saw it again. A shadow flitting through the dense foliage on the opposite bank. My body tensed, every nerve on high alert. I knew that shadow. I had seen it before. The figure. The same one that had appeared earlier, the one with the knife. They were watching me again. I couldn't see them clearly, just the outline of a person, their eyes glinting from beneath the canopy of leaves. The figure didn't move closer, but they didn't retreat either. They just stood there, observing. The silence stretched long between us. My hand instinctively went to the makeshift knife I had crafted from a jagged rock. But I didn't draw it. I wasn't looking for a fight. Not yet. Finally, the figure spoke, their voice low but clear enough for me to hear over the rushing stream. "You should leave, before it's too late." I didn't respond, couldn't. The words caught in my throat. Who were they? Were they the ones who lived in the jungle? What did they know about this place? And why were they warning me? I wanted to ask all these questions, but something in the tone of their voice stopped me. It wasn't pity or kindness. No, it was a warning. A warning that I didn't quite understand but felt deep in my bones. The figure's eyes never left mine. For a long, tense moment, they seemed to consider something. Maybe me, maybe the jungle. Then, as quickly as they had appeared, they turned and melted back into the shadows. Their figures swallowed by the thick foliage, and I was left alone again, standing by the stream, my heart still racing. But now it was different. Now I wasn't just trying to escape the prison. Now, I was trying to escape the jungle. It wasn't the hunger or the thirst that scared me. Those were simple, human things. I could deal with them. It was the creeping sense of being hunted. The feeling that something was always just a few steps behind, waiting for me to slip up, to make the wrong move. I couldn't shake the image of the figure standing across the stream, their eyes glowing with that strange, knowing look. They were right about one thing: I shouldn't be here. But what did that mean? And who were they really? Were they just another soul lost in the jungle, like me? Or were they something else? A hunter, maybe? A ghost of this cursed place? As the sun began to dip below the canopy, casting long shadows over the jungle floor, I knew it was time to find shelter. There was no way I was going to survive another night out here without some form of protection. The jungle was beautiful, yes, but it was also brutal. It didn't care whether you lived or died. You were just another part of the cycle. That I picked my way through the thick undergrowth, eyes scanning the trees, listening for any sign of movement. I didn't have the luxury of being able to rest. My escape had left me too exposed, too vulnerable. There was no telling how many dangers lurked in the shadows. Then I heard it. A faint rustle to my left. A soft, deliberate sound. My heart skipped a beat. I didn't hesitate. My instincts kicked in, and I spun toward the noise, my body low, my knife gripped tightly in my hand. But nothing came. The air was still. The only sound now, the gentle sway of the trees and the distant call of some creature I couldn't name. I stood there for a moment, waiting, listening. Nothing. It was easy to convince myself that I was just being paranoid, that the jungle was playing tricks on me. But I knew better. I had been in the wilderness long enough to recognize when something wasn't right. That I moved cautiously, each step careful and deliberate. My senses were heightened, my every nerve firing, alive with the anticipation of danger. Then, from the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of movement, just a flash. A dark shape darting between the trees. It was gone before I could react. But I knew that shape. It was too deliberate to be a wild animal. It was a person who knew this jungle better than I did. I wasn't alone. Not in the way I thought. Up next, I wasn't just dealing with the jungle anymore. I was being stalked. I forced myself to keep moving. There was no time to dwell on it, no time to let the fear take root. My mind raced, calculating options, trying to figure out what to do next. I needed shelter, I needed safety, and I needed it fast. Eventually, I found it. A hollow in the base of a massive tree, thick with moss and vines. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. I could see the faint outline of a small cave-like opening beneath the roots, just big enough for me to crawl into. It wasn't ideal, but it would provide me some cover. I quickly crawled inside, my muscles sore from the day's travel, the weight of exhaustion threatening to pull me under. I pulled the vines in behind me, forming a crude barricade, just enough to obscure the entrance. For the first time since my escape, I allowed myself to sit down, my back pressed against the cold earth, and breathe. I had a moment of peace. But it didn't last long. The jungle didn't allow peace. Just as I was about to close my eyes, a distant sound reached my ears. The faintest crunch of leaves, the soft thud of footsteps. Footsteps that didn't belong to me. I froze. My hand instinctively went to the knife at my side. They were getting closer. I held my breath, trying to make myself as small as possible, my heart thumping in my chest. The sound grew louder, closer, until I could almost feel the weight of it in the air. Someone was out there, moving through the jungle like they knew exactly where I was. I could hear them breathing, steady and controlled, as if they were savoring the moment. Then, from somewhere just beyond my hideout, I heard a voice, Outsider. It was the figure again. The one who had warned me earlier. They were close, closer than I'd ever realized that I didn't move, didn't make a sound. My heart thudded in my ears. I could feel the coolness of the air around me, the thick smell of moss and earth, the almost oppressive weight of the jungle pressing in from all sides. Do you think you can escape? The voice was soft but filled with a strange certainty, a cruel mockery in its tone. The voice didn't wait for an answer. You'll learn. The jungle doesn't let you leave. The words were a whisper now, carried on the wind. And it doesn't forget. I clenched my teeth, forcing myself to remain still. My mind raced. I could feel the panic creeping up my spine, but I shoved it down. No, I had to focus. I had to survive. I waited in that hollow, in the damp dark, for what felt like hours. The jungle around me seemed to come alive. Rustling leaves, the drip of water from the high branches, distant animal calls that were growing more insistent. And still I waited. When I finally peeked out, the figure was gone, but the weight of their words lingered in my mind like a poison. The jungle doesn't let you leave. I didn't know if it was a warning or a curse, but either way, it was something I couldn't ignore. The morning came too quickly. The sun broke through the canopy with a suddenness that left me blinking, disoriented. I had barely slept. The hollow I'd found in the massive tree had offered some protection from the elements, but it hadn't shielded me from the sense of dread that gnawed at the edges of my mind. It had been hours since the figure had whispered those words, but they had settled deep inside me, like a seed growing roots in my chest. The jungle doesn't let you leave. I could still hear their voice in my head, that strange, ominous tone as they spoke about the jungle as if it were a living thing, with a mind of its own. I tried to shake it off. I wasn't about to let fear dictate my actions, not after everything I'd already been through. The guards, the prison, my escape, those were the real enemies. The jungle could be a monster, yes, but it was nothing I couldn't handle. Or so I thought. I forced myself out of the hollow and back into the oppressive heat. The air felt like it was suffocating me, and the dense foliage made everything feel claustrophobic. I wasn't sure which direction I was heading in anymore, but I knew I couldn't stay in one place for too long. I needed to keep moving. The sound of rushing water from the stream had already faded behind me, swallowed up by the jungle's noise. I pushed through the underbrush, my eyes scanning for any sign of danger, any movement that would indicate I wasn't alone. And then I heard it. A low, throaty growl. My stomach clenched. I knew that sound. I'd heard it before in the prison yard, in the dark, distant corners of the courtyard where the guards kept the vicious dogs. It was the sound of something hungry, something large. I stopped dead in my tracks, barely breathing. I'd read enough books and survival manuals to know when to stay still and when to move. In this case, stillness was my only hope. The growl came again, louder this time, followed by the crunch of leaves under heavy paws. It was close. Too close that I took slow, deliberate steps backward, my heart thudding in my chest, each beat louder than the last. The growl sounded almost playful now, as if the creature was savoring the chase. I didn't want to turn and look, but I had to. I had to know how much time I had. I eased my head around, just enough to catch a glimpse of the thing that was stalking me. It was massive. A jaguar. Its sleek, muscular body moved with a grace that almost seemed unnatural, its yellow eyes glowing like twin coals in the dim light of the jungle. It crouched low to the ground, its body rippling as it stalked toward me with the kind of focus only a predator could have. It was the perfect hunter, built for the jungle. Silent, stealthy, deadly. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. My hand tightened around the jagged rock knife I'd made, but I knew deep down it wouldn't do a damn thing against a creature like that. The jaguar stopped, its gaze locking onto mine. For a long moment, we were frozen, locked in some primal stare-down that seemed to stretch for eternity. It was as if time itself had slowed, and the world around us, every leaf, every shadow, every breath, became insignificant, and then, with a suddenness that sent a jolt of panic through my spine, the jaguar lunged. I didn't wait to see where it would strike. I bolted. Adrenaline surged through me, my legs pumping harder than they ever had in my life. I dashed through the jungle, dodging branches, leaping over fallen logs, my heart racing as the jungle came alive around me. I could hear the jaguar's growls, its claws scraping the earth as it chased me. Faster, faster. With every step I took, my body screamed for me to slow down. But there was no time. The jaguar was faster than I was, and I couldn't outrun it. I had to find something, anything that could give me an advantage. Ahead, I saw a rocky outcrop, a small cliff maybe 5 meters high with jagged rocks jutting from the earth. It wasn't much, but it was my only hope that I reached the outcrop in seconds, my hands grabbing the rocks and hoisting myself up. But I could already hear the jaguar gaining on me, its growls closer now, almost at my heels. Just as my hand touched the last ledge, I felt it, the hot breath of the jaguar as it snapped at my ankle. Missing by a hair, that I screamed, pulling myself up just in time to avoid its deadly teeth. I scrambled to the top, my muscles burning, my chest heaving for breath, and finally, I was safe, at least for the moment. Up next, the jaguar circled below, pacing, its eyes never leaving me. I could hear it growling, frustrated, but it didn't attempt to climb. It knew it couldn't reach me from there. I stayed on that ledge for hours, too afraid to move, too terrified to make a sound. The jaguar eventually lost interest and disappeared back into the jungle. But the sense of relief was short-lived. I was still trapped, perched on a ledge, surrounded by a jungle that was no more merciful than the one I had just escaped. The sun was low now, and the jungle was alive with noise. Birds calling, insects buzzing, the sound of something large moving in the underbrush. I had to get down, but I couldn't risk it. Not yet. Not while the jungle was so full of eyes, both human and animal. I thought back to the figure. They had warned me, but it wasn't just about surviving the jungle's physical dangers. It was something deeper, something darker. The jungle doesn't let you leave. And now I knew the truth. It didn't just want you to stay. It wanted to consume you. I woke to the sound of thunder at first. I thought it was just a distant rumble, a memory of the storm that had begun to build hours ago. But the sound grew louder, more immediate, like a warning that the heavens themselves were about to come crashing down. The air was thick, saturated with moisture, and a heavy weight pressed against my chest, making every breath feel like it required an effort of will. I stood shakily, my body still sore from the previous day's chase, my muscles stiff and aching. The jaguar's growls had faded with the night, but I hadn't dared to sleep. The events of the day before, the terrifying pursuit, had left me on edge, unable to let go of the fear that clawed at my insides. I didn't trust the jungle. Not anymore. It wasn't just the animals, the jaguars, the venomous snakes, or the wild rivers. It was something darker, more insidious. Something I couldn't name, but it was there. Watching. A crack of thunder split the air, and rain began to pour from the sky in torrents. The temperature dropped instantly, and the jungle around me seemed to come alive with the sudden downpour. The sound of water crashing against the leaves was deafening. It wasn't just rain. It was a monsoon, and it was happening all at once. The force of the storm hit me like a physical blow. I had to find shelter, but there was no time. I was soaked in seconds, the rain pooling at my feet, turning the ground beneath me into a slick, treacherous mire. I fought against the current of water rushing through the underbrush, my clothes sticking to my skin, the heavy downpour blurring my vision. And I knew that if I didn't find cover soon, the jungle would become my grave. I pushed forward, stumbling through the thick vegetation, searching desperately for any sign of shelter. The trees, so protective just hours ago, now felt like an enemy, their thick canopies only allowing the rain to pound down in waves. The muddy ground sucked at my boots, dragging me down with every step. Then, I saw it. A cave, barely visible through the curtain of rain, hidden beneath a cluster of massive ferns. It wasn't much, but it was something. I couldn't afford to be picky. I ran toward it, my heart hammering in my chest. But just as I reached the mouth of the cave, a loud crack split the air, louder than thunder. A massive tree, uprooted by the storm, came crashing down just a few feet away, sending a shockwave of terror through me. I barely managed to leap to the side in time, my legs shaking as I scrambled into the safety of the cave. I collapsed to the ground, my breath coming in ragged gasps, drenched and cold. The storm raged outside, but in here, at least for now, I was safe. For the first time since I had entered this hellish place, I allowed myself a moment of stillness. My body ached with exhaustion, my mind reeling from the intensity of the past few days. But I couldn't stop thinking about what the figure had said. The jungle doesn't let you leave. I didn't know what that meant. But I knew now that the jungle wasn't just a physical place. It was a force, an entity that wanted something from me. Something I couldn't understand. I sat there in the darkness of the cave, my mind spinning with questions. What did it want? Why had it let me get this far only to turn on me now? And what had happened to the figure, the one who had warned me? Were they part of this? The cave smelled of earth and decay, the dampness clinging to the walls. It was dark, and I had no fire, no light, nothing but the sound of the storm pounding against the earth. The rain outside turned the world into a gray blur. I had no sense of time anymore. Hours? Days? It didn't matter. It could have been a minute, and I would have no way of knowing. But then the feeling came again. That terrible sensation that I wasn't alone. My skin prickled, every hair on the back of my neck standing at attention. The air in the cave grew heavier, thicker, and I could feel something, someone, watching me from the shadows. I couldn't see it, but I knew it was there. A soft rustling sound broke the silence, coming from deep within the cave. My pulse shot up, and I reached for the jagged rock knife at my side. My fingers trembling, the rustling grew louder, more deliberate. Something was moving toward me. I held my breath. My body coiled like a spring, ready to react at the slightest movement. My eyes darted around the cave, but it was too dark, too still. The only thing I could hear was the storm outside and the faint, rhythmic sound of whatever was coming toward me. Then, suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows. I let out a sharp breath, my heart in my throat. It wasn't an animal. It was a person. At least it looked like a person. Their skin was dark, almost black, but what caught my eye were the eyes, piercing, glowing white against the darkness. Like two pools of light in the cave, I froze, staring at them. They were wearing nothing but ragged clothes, patches of skin covered in tattoos that seemed to shimmer in the faint light. The figure didn't speak at first. They just stood there, watching me with an intensity that made my blood run cold. Their presence was unnatural, as if they didn't belong to this world, as if they had stepped out of the jungle itself. Finally, they spoke. "You shouldn't be here." Their voice was low, almost a whisper, but it carried a weight that settled deep in my bones. I wanted to ask who they were, why they were here, but my voice wouldn't come. Fear had lodged itself in my throat, choking me silent. The figure stepped closer, and the air around us seemed to grow even heavier. The cave felt smaller, the walls closing in. They were too close now. I could feel their presence like a shadow, like something ancient, something powerful. And then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, they were gone. I blinked. The cave was empty. The storm outside raged on, the rain now a constant roar against the rock. But something had changed. The jungle had become more than just a place I was trying to escape. It had become something alive, something that wanted me. The jungle doesn't let you leave, and I was beginning to understand exactly what that meant. When the rain finally stopped, it didn't feel like the end of the storm. It felt like the eye of something much worse. The world was silent again, too silent. No birds, no insects, no wind. Just the heavy drip of water falling from the leaves outside the cave and the slow beat of my own pulse in my ears. I'd been awake all night. I didn't dare sleep after what I'd seen, or thought I'd seen. The figure's eyes had burned into my mind, glowing like coals in the dark. When I'd blinked, they had vanished. But I could still feel them on me, watching, judging, waiting. I crawled out of the cave on my hands and knees, squinting against the gray light. The storm had changed everything. The jungle was unrecognizable. Trees lay broken and twisted, their massive roots ripped from the earth. The air was thick with the smell of mud and rot. The ground sucked at my feet as I stumbled forward, my boots sinking into the muck. Up next, water ran in rivulets between the trees, forming shallow streams that reflected the pale, cold light filtering through the canopy. I knew I had to move before the heat returned. before the insects came back. The storm had probably washed away most of my tracks, but I didn't know if that mattered anymore. I didn't even know if I was being followed by people that it was the jungle I didn't trust. Every tree seemed to twist toward me, its branches arching low like fingers reaching out. The vines swayed even when there was no wind. The ground felt softer, almost breathing beneath my feet. I thought I was escaping a prison. But this place, this was something else entirely. A living cage. By midday, the air grew thick again, hotter than before. Steam rose from the soaked earth, curling around me like smoke. The humidity wrapped itself around my lungs, heavy and suffocating. I kept walking, trying to stay alert, but the exhaustion was catching up with me. My stomach growled. I hadn't eaten in 2 days. That was when I saw it, fruit, hanging from a low branch, bright red and shining, like a drop of blood suspended in the air. My mouth watered. I didn't care what it was. I reached out and plucked it, my fingers trembling with anticipation. The fruit was cool in my hand, smooth, almost waxy. I hesitated only for a moment before biting into it. The flesh was soft, sweet, almost too sweet. For a moment, relief flooded through me. Then I tasted it. Bitterness, deep and metallic, like rust or blood. I spat it out immediately, wiping my mouth on my sleeve. My tongue burned. A strange numbness spread across my lips. My heartbeat slowed, poisoned. I staggered back, panic clawing up my throat. The world tilted, and the trees seemed to bend and twist with it, their shapes warping like smoke. I could hear something whispering now, soft, unintelligible, like a chorus of voices hidden in the leaves. I stumbled, dropping to my knees, my vision swimming. My pulse thundered in my ears. The whispers grew louder. Outsider, outsider. The word repeated, echoing in my skull. I clutched my head, trying to block it out, but it was inside me now, every breath, every thought. Then I saw them. Shapes moving between the trees. Dozens of them. Shadows of people. Some crawling, some limping, some hanging from the branches like broken dolls. Their eyes glowed faintly, the same cold light I had seen in the cave. I tried to back away, but my limbs felt heavy, sluggish. I couldn't tell if they were real or just the fever twisting my mind. One of the figures stepped forward. It was the same one. The figure from the stream, from the cave. Only now, I could see them clearly. Their skin was marked with symbols, carved deep into their flesh like ritual scars. Their eyes gleamed white. They looked both human and something else. Something ancient, molded by this place. "You've eaten," they said softly. Their voice was calm, but there was a cruel satisfaction in it. "Now the jungle knows you." My heart pounded. "What do you mean?" My voice came out hoarse, barely a whisper. But the figure just smiled. Not kindly, not cruelly, just knowingly. "It takes from those who take from it," they said. "It gives back what is owed." The others began to move closer, surrounding me. I could feel their breath on my skin, their presence pressing in. I scrambled backward, but there was nowhere to go. The jungle itself seemed to close around me, vines tightening, roots snaking toward my feet. I shouted, striking at them, but my arms felt heavy, slow. My vision was fading around the edges, colors bleeding together. The figure's voice followed me, low and steady. "You escaped one prison," they said, "but this one was waiting. It always waits." The last thing I saw before the darkness swallowed me was the figure's hand reaching toward my face. Long, bony fingers, nails blackened like claws, and then everything went black. When I woke, I was lying in the mud. The jungle was silent again. I sat up, my head pounding, my body covered in dirt and bruises. The fruit was gone. The figures were gone. The poison's burn had faded, but something was different. The jungle felt different. The colors were sharper. The sounds clearer, the air, alive, and deep down I could feel it. Something had changed inside me. It wasn't just the hunger or the fear anymore. It was something else, something that pulsed beneath my skin. The jungle wasn't just outside me now. It was inside me. The world was different now. The sounds, the sights, the way the air felt against my skin. The jungle was no longer just a place I was trying to survive in. It was a part of me, I could feel it, pressing in from all sides, like the pulse of something alive beneath the earth. My breath came in shallow gasps as I stood, unsteady, my body weak from the poison, but my mind clearer than it had ever been. But there was something else. The hunger.it wasn't a physical hunger anymore. Not just the gnawing ache in my stomach from lack of food. It was something deeper, more primal. My senses were heightened in a way I couldn't explain. The smallest movements in the underbrush, the faintest shift in the air. Everything felt like it was part of a larger web, something ancient, something that had always been here that I was part of that web now. Whether I liked it or not, I moved through the jungle, my feet heavier than they should have been, my head cloudy with the strange aftereffects of whatever poison had laced the fruit. It hadn't just dulled my body, it had opened something in my mind, something raw and ancient. The forest whispered to me now, not in words, but in feelings, in flashes of images, of memories that didn't belong to me. I could almost hear its pulse, feel the sway of the trees as they breathed around me, and I could hear the footsteps of things that weren't there. The murmur of voices too far to reach, and always, the feeling of being watched that I had to find a way out. I had to keep moving. But every time I tried to take a step in a direction, it was as if the jungle itself was pulling me back, guiding me deeper into its grasp. I was lost, but I didn't know if I was lost because of the jungle, or because it wanted me to be lost. The paths, the trails, the landmarks, they were all fading away, like the jungle was erasing them from my memory. And then it happened. I saw her again. The figure, up next. She was standing in the distance, half shrouded by the trees, her pale skin glowing faintly against the backdrop of dark foliage. Her eyes, those white, glowing eyes, locked onto mine. "Come," she said. Her voice as soft as the wind through the leaves. My legs moved before my mind could stop them, drawn to her as if by some invisible thread. I followed, walking through the jungle like a puppet on a string, unable to stop, unable to resist. The jungle felt alive around me, almost as if it was breathing with me, in time with my every movement. The path ahead twisted and turned, but I no longer saw the trees as obstacles. I saw them as guides. Every vine, every leaf, every stone was part of the same vast pattern that I was now a part of. The figure led me to a clearing. There, in the center of the clearing, stood a massive tree unlike any I had ever seen. Its bark was black as coal, and its roots stretched out like tentacles, winding deep into the earth, pulling everything toward it. The tree's canopy was vast, almost impossibly wide, and as I looked up, I could see faint shapes moving among the branches, like something alive, something watching. The figure turned to me, her eyes glowing brighter now. "It's time," she said. My heart pounded. "Time for what?" She smiled, and for the first time it wasn't a cold smile. It was gentle, almost motherly. "Time to become part of it," she whispered. "Time to feed." Before I could react, the earth beneath my feet shifted. The tree groaned, its roots stretching toward me, twitching like serpents hungry for their prey. I tried to back away, but it was too late. The roots wrapped around my ankles, pulling me down toward the earth. My breath hitched as the ground itself seemed to swallow me whole. The jungle was no longer a backdrop. It was the force behind everything. It was taking me in, drawing me deeper, like a wound healing itself. "No!" I screamed, struggling, but it was no use. The roots held me fast, squeezing tighter and tighter. The figure stood above me, watching, her smile widening, and I realized, too late, that she wasn't trying to save me. She was part of this, part of the jungle, part of the curse that bound everything together. That I could feel it now. The hunger. It was in my veins, racing through me like wildfire. The jungle needed me, needed my body to feed it, needed my essence to sustain it. This is the jungle's nature, I thought, too late. It feeds, consumes, and I am part of it now. That I tried to scream again, but no sound came out. The roots continued to tighten, dragging me toward the heart of the earth, toward the pulsing, beating core of this twisted place. And then, the ground opened up beneath me. That I fell. When I woke, I was no longer on the surface. That I was in the dark. The air was thick, damp, almost suffocating. My face pressed against cold stone, and my limbs felt heavy, numb. I tried to move, but my body didn't obey. Panic rose in my chest, but it felt distant, unreal that I could hear something. Voices, soft murmurs, like chants, but the language was foreign. I could feel something else too, something more tangible, like a presence that was watching, waiting. I tried to look around, but the darkness was complete. It wasn't just the jungle. It was beneath the jungle, a place older than the trees, older than the soil. And then I felt it. A hand. Cold. Long thin fingers, wrapped around my wrist, pulling me up. The figure was there again. She smiled at me. "You didn't think it was over, did you?" She whispered. I looked down at my hand. My fingers were different. Twisted. Bruised. Rooted. My skin was pale, cracked in places, like the bark of a tree. And the hunger, it was still there, stronger than ever. "You belong to the jungle now," the figure said softly. "You are part of it." I turned, desperate to understand. "What are you doing to me?" She tilted her head, her eyes glowing faintly. "I'm giving you what you need, to survive, to become one with the forest, to become the forest." I wasn't dead. At least, not yet. The world around me was a blur of shadows and shapes, a dark mass pressing in from all sides. I could feel the ground beneath me, cold, smooth stone, and the stifling air pressing in like a vice. My head swam as if I were waking from a long, feverish dream, and everything around me felt unreal, like I was standing in the space between waking and sleeping. My body felt wrong. I tried to lift my arms, but they were sluggish, stiff. I could barely feel them. Panic rose in my chest, but I fought to push it down, pushing myself up to a sitting position, groaning as I did. My breath came in short, sharp bursts, my heart hammering in my chest. The first thing I noticed was the smell, the heavy, suffocating odor of wet earth, of decay. The second thing was the coldness of the stone beneath my palms. My fingers brushed against it, and it felt alive, warm, pulsing. The air in this place was thick, like it was infused with the weight of something ancient. It wasn't just humidity. It was as if the jungle itself had taken root here, deep in the earth, and the space around me was alive. It was breathing, waiting. The figure was standing in front of me again. She hadn't moved. Her eyes gleamed in the dim light, and her smile was still there, gentle, almost tender. But there was something hidden in it, something cold. "You're beginning to understand," she said, her voice soft, like the rustling of leaves. "The jungle will claim you in time. You are already becoming a part of it." I shook my head, desperate to break free of whatever this was, but the roots were still there, twisting around my legs, holding me in place. I tried to move, but my body was weak, numb, like it was being pulled toward the earth. "No," I muttered, more to myself than to her. I won't be part of this." She tilted her head, her eyes narrowing slightly. "The jungle doesn't ask," she whispered. "It takes. You've eaten, you've drunk. The roots have already started to feed on you." I looked down, but the sight of my hands stopped me. They were covered in a layer of something. Mud? Dirt? No. The skin was different, darker, with rough, bark-like patches where my skin used to be smooth. My pulse quickened. "What did you do to me?" I hissed, trying to jerk away, but the roots only tightened their grip. "I didn't do this," she said, almost pityingly. "You've been marked since the moment you stepped into the jungle. It's just taking what's owed. The jungle always claims its own." Couldn't breathe. My chest felt tight, and the weight of the jungle pressed in on me, pulling at my mind, at my soul. I had to escape. I had to fight. But something deep inside me, a part of me that I couldn't quite grasp, something primal and ancient, was beginning to respond to the pull. The hunger was still there, gnawing at me, deep in my gut. And now it wasn't just hunger for food. It was hunger for the jungle. I could feel it, feeding on me. Feeding me. I clenched my fists, but the roots wouldn't let me move. It was like the earth itself was holding me in place, binding me to this dark, twisted place beneath the jungle. I wasn't just trapped physically. I was trapped in my mind. Get away from me! I screamed, straining against the earth. My body shook with the effort, but it was no use. The roots had grown deep into my flesh, coiling around my legs, my arms. You can resist, if you want, she said. But in the end, the jungle will always take what it wants. There's no way out now. You've crossed the threshold. You belong here. No, the word came out weak, but I forced myself to stand, even as the earth seemed to pull at my body. My legs buckled beneath me, and I fell again, my hands slapping the cold stone, trying to push myself up. Suddenly, there was a sound, movement in the dark. I whipped around, desperate, hoping to see something, anything, that could help. But it wasn't an ally I saw. It was more of them, figures, emerging from the shadows. Their glowing white eyes fixed on me, I gasped. There were more, dozens of them, all staring, silent, watching, waiting. The same figures I had seen before. People marked by the jungle, their bodies twisted, their skin cracked, like they were part of the very earth itself. I could see the same symbols on their skin, the same tattoos carved deep into their flesh. Their eyes gleamed in the darkness. You're one of us now, one of them said, their voice rasping like whined through dry leaves. We were all taken, and now it's your turn. Up next, I struggled against the roots, but they held me fast. The more I resisted, the tighter they became, pulling me deeper into the earth, pulling me down into the jungle, into its heart. I could feel it now, the power, the hunger, the weight of the jungle in my veins. I could hear the pulse of the trees. It was calling to me. I looked at the figures, at their glowing eyes, and suddenly I understood. They weren't just here because they had been claimed by the jungle. They were prisoners just like me, trapped in this endless cycle. The jungle didn't let go. Couldn't. But I couldn't give in. I couldn't become one of them. I had to fight. I had to escape. I glanced around frantically. There had to be a way out of this. The jungle was everywhere. I could feel it closing in, could almost hear the roots reaching toward me. I had to use it. Without thinking, I ripped a jagged stone from the ground and hacked at the roots around my legs. My movements were wild, frantic, but it didn't matter. I didn't care how much blood I drew from my own flesh. I just needed to break free. And then it came, the moment where everything shifted. As I slashed at the roots, they recoiled, twitching violently as if in pain. A low rumble filled the air, vibrating through the ground beneath me. The jungle, it was alive, sentient. I didn't have time to think, only to act. I tore myself free, stumbling backward, my heart pounding in my chest. The jungle screamed. I ran. But even as I ran, I could feel it in the air. Something watching, something waiting for me to slip. The jungle knew me now, knew I was its prisoner. And no matter how far I ran, I knew it would never let me go. The jungle didn't let go. I thought that if I ran fast enough, if I pushed through the pain, I could escape its grip. But every step felt heavier, like the ground itself was pulling at me, dragging me back. The trees swayed in a way that wasn't natural. The vines twitched as if they had a mind of their own, reaching for me, tugging at my clothes, pulling at my skin. The air thickened with each breath, as if it were laced with something alive. I had felt the jungle before, but now it wasn't just around me. It was inside me. The hunger gnawed at my gut like 1,000 hungry mouths. The scent of the earth was a constant presence, thick and suffocating. It was no longer just the scent of the jungle. It was the scent of my own blood, of the earth that had taken root inside me. And the voices, they were getting louder, soft whispers in the wind, echoes of things long forgotten, things buried in the roots of the world. I could hear them even now, calling to me, telling me that I belonged here, that I was part of this outsider. The word floated in my mind like a chant. Outsider, outsider. I gritted my teeth, trying to block it out, trying to focus on the path ahead. There had to be a way out of this, some corner of the jungle I could reach where the pull of the earth wouldn't claim me. But I was wrong. The jungle was a trap, and every time I thought I was making progress, I was only falling deeper into it was only when the ground shifted beneath me that I realized the jungle had already decided that I felt it in the air. The sudden drop in temperature, the shift in the atmosphere, the silence, broken only by the sound of my own footsteps. I looked up, scanning the canopy above, but all I saw were thick, twisting branches, shadows that felt too dark, too alive. Then I heard it, a distant sound, faint but unmistakable, the rustle of leaves, a soft, guttural sound like something breathing, something large, something waiting. I froze. My breath hitched in my chest, and for a moment, I thought I might pass out. The jungle was alive with it now. Its pulse, its hunger, its endless, insatiable desire to consume. That I wasn't just running from the jungle. I was being hunted by it. That I turned and ran, my legs heavy, my heart pounding. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the ground beneath me seemed to shift with every step. The jungle was alive. It wasn't just a forest. It wasn't just a place of trees and vines. It was a mind, consciousness. It knew me. I had crossed a line. I wasn't just trying to escape the jungle. I was fighting it within me. The voices were louder now. I couldn't tell if they were real or if it was my mind cracking under the strain, but I could hear them as clearly as I heard my own thoughts. Feed. I stumbled, nearly tripping over a root that hadn't been there a moment ago. My skin was crawling. I felt it beneath my feet, the slow, insidious pull of the earth. The roots were reaching for me again. I couldn't stop. I had to keep moving. Ahead of me, the forest seemed to open into a small clearing, but the moment I stepped into it, I realized I'd made a terrible mistake. The ground trembled beneath me. I looked up, but it wasn't the trees I feared anymore. It wasn't the roots or the vines. It was the shadows. There was something moving in them, something huge. A figure emerged from the trees. A man, or something that had once been a man. His body was covered in thick, gnarled roots, his face obscured by dark tendrils of vine. His eyes, those same glowing white eyes I had seen before, were locked on me. He stood taller than any man should, his limbs impossibly long, his fingers tipped with black, claw-like nails. The figure stepped forward, his movements slow but deliberate. "You thought you could escape?" he rasped. His voice was deep, like the rumble of thunder, but it echoed inside my mind. "You belong here. The jungle has already taken you." I stumbled backward, my heart pounding in my chest. I could feel the earth vibrating beneath me, and then I heard it again, the soft, guttural breath. The jungle itself was alive. I turned to run, but my legs wouldn't move fast enough. I could feel it now, the weight of the jungle pressing down on me, the roots tightening beneath my skin, dragging me toward the earth. "No!" I shouted, desperate, feeling the panic rise in my chest. I reached for anything to hold on to, but the jungle was everywhere. It was inside me now. The hunger, the need to feed, the urge to become part of it. "Fight!" I screamed to myself. "Fight!" Up next, I lashed out at the roots, kicking and scrambling, but they only pulled tighter. I could hear the figure's footsteps behind me, closing in. I was trapped. Then I saw it in the distance. Through the trees, there was a glimmer of light. Not much, just a sliver, but it was enough. Without thinking, I pushed forward. I pushed harder, trying to break free, to reach the light. I could feel the figure's presence behind me, the jungle's power pushing against me, but I refused to stop. The light grew brighter. I reached it, a gap between the trees. The air seemed thinner here, the space more open. It was a way out. That I dove through the gap, crashing into the underbrush, my heart racing, my limbs aching. I didn't look back. Couldn't. The jungle would never let me go. I ran. The jungle was screaming behind me now. The voices were a cacophony, rising to a deafening crescendo. The earth seemed to rise against me, pushing back with every step. But I was getting closer. I could feel it. Then, suddenly, the ground opened beneath me again. I screamed, my body falling, tumbling into the darkness. The ground beneath me swallowed everything. My scream, my breath, the wild rush of panic in my chest. I felt that I had no idea how far. I didn't have time to calculate the drop, didn't have time to brace for impact. My body crashed against something hard, stone, roots, 1,000 jagged edges all at once. My breath left me in a harsh gasp, my limbs bruised, my head spinning. For a moment, I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My lungs were on fire, my chest tight, every muscle screaming in protest. The jungle had pulled me down into the earth that I dragged myself upright, blood trickling from a gash on my forehead. The darkness was so thick I couldn't see my own hands in front of my face, but I felt the heat of the jungle around me. I could smell it. Wet earth, rotting vegetation, the sharp, bitter tang of decay. It was suffocating, but it was also familiar. The jungle's pulse was stronger here, thumping like a second heartbeat, deep under the ground. Like the roots of the trees were wrapped around the very core of the earth itself that I reached out, touching the rough stone walls around me. The air was stifling, oppressive. It felt like the walls themselves were breathing, like the whole underground space was alive, twisting and shifting with every moment that passed. And then I felt something else. Something moving in the darkness. My heart skipped a beat, panic surging through me. My senses, already heightened by the jungle's influence, picked up the sound before my eyes could adjust. The soft padding of something large moving across the stone floor. I wasn't alone. I snapped around, eyes wide, my breath coming in ragged gasps, but the darkness revealed nothing. The sound continued, though. The movement, like something was circling me. Closing in. That I backed up slowly, feeling my way across the stone. But I didn't know where I was going. I couldn't see anything. Couldn't hear anything except the growing sound of my own breath and the rhythmic pulse of the jungle deep beneath me. Then I heard it. A growl, low and guttural. A sound that vibrated through the very air. Something was stalking me. I broke into a run, my feet slamming against the stone floor, but the path ahead was endless. The walls, the stone, everything felt like it was closing in on me. Couldn't stop. I couldn't escape. Every direction felt the same. Every shadow was a threat. The growl echoed again. Closer this time. That I couldn't let it catch me, that I couldn't become another part of this. Another lost soul feeding the earth. But I was already changing. I could feel it. The jungle's influence was deepening within me. My skin, it wasn't my skin anymore. It was thickening, darkening, rough like bark. My fingers were twitching, curling involuntarily. It wasn't just physical anymore, it was mental. My thoughts, my instincts, everything was blurring. The hunger was there, gnawing at me, pushing me to feed. To become one with the jungle. That I reached a sudden opening, the walls widening around me, and stopped. I couldn't hear the growl anymore. But something else, something worse, was waiting. A figure stepped out of the shadows. At first, I thought it was one of the other figures, the ones I had seen before, twisted by the jungle's power. But then I realized, this one was different. This one was human. Her hair was tangled and wild, her eyes glowing a dull, unnatural white. She stood tall, almost impossibly so, her limbs thin but with a strange, sinewy strength to them. Her skin was dark and cracked, covered in what looked like tattoos, but they weren't tattoos. They were roots, embedded deep in her flesh, pulsing with a life of their own. She tilted her head, her eyes narrowing as she studied me. There was no pity in her expression, only hunger. "Another one," she whispered, her voice like the rustling of dry leaves. "Another one to feed the jungle." I recoiled, my pulse racing. "What are you? What is this place?" She stepped closer, her movements slow, deliberate, almost graceful, as if she had all the time in the world. "This place is the heart of the jungle," she said, each word wrapped in the eerie hum of the earth beneath her feet. "And we, those who are taken, we are its blood." I felt my stomach twist at her words, a sudden, uncontrollable surge of fear flooding through me. "No, I won't become like you. I won't let it take me." Her lips curled into a smile, but it wasn't the kind of smile that made you feel better. It was cold, deadly. "You already are," she said, her voice soft but filled with terrible certainty. "You don't see it yet, but the jungle has marked you. You've been feeding on it, letting it feed on you. It's inside you now, just like it's inside me. I felt it then, the change, the twisting in my veins, the way the roots moved beneath my skin. I was becoming part of it. But I wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. I turned, and before I could think, I ran. Up next, I heard her laugh behind me, that dry, rustling laugh that made my skin crawl. But I didn't stop. The hunger was gnawing at my insides, but my mind was still clear enough to know what I had to do. I had to keep moving. I had to escape, before I became just another part of the jungle's endless cycle. I didn't know where I was going. The darkness seemed endless. The growl came again, closer. The thing in the shadows was still following me. But I had to keep moving. Through the labyrinth of stone and root, I ran, until I saw the light. It wasn't much. A faint glow, flickering like a dying flame. But it was enough. I lunged toward it, my legs burning, my chest tight, but I couldn't stop. Couldn't let the jungle win. Not now. I emerged into another clearing. This one wide open, bathed in pale moonlight, and there, in the center, was a door. I couldn't believe it. A door made of stone, covered in ancient symbols. Symbols that I knew somehow. Symbols that had been burned into my mind the moment I stepped into the jungle. This was it. This was my way out. But as I reached for the door, I heard it. The unmistakable sound of something large and heavy crashing toward me. The thing in the shadows. It was close. Too close. I had one chance. I grabbed the door's handle, wrenched it open, and stepped into the light. The door didn't feel real as I stepped through it. I half expected the ground to swallow me whole again, to drag me back down into that suffocating darkness. But instead, there was only light, faint and flickering like a dying star. But there, a soft, pale blue glow that didn't come from any natural source. I staggered forward, gasping for air, my heart pounding in my chest. The weight of the jungle's presence was still on me, thick as smoke in my lungs, the pulse of the earth vibrating through my bones. The door slammed shut behind me with a final, sickening thud. I spun around, expecting to see the figure behind me, expecting to hear the growl or feel the cold, ancient breath of the jungle on my neck. But there was nothing, just the silence of the place. And the light. I felt it calling to me. The world around me was a stark contrast to the twisted, suffocating jungle. The space was expansive, vast, a cavernous room that stretched beyond the reach of the light. The walls were smooth stone, but covered with intricate carvings, their symbols eerily familiar. They pulsed with energy, as if alive, and the air here felt thinner, like it was charged with something ancient and primal. It sang to me, deep in my chest, vibrating against my ribs. That I should have been running. I should have kept going, kept fighting. But instead, my feet carried me forward, drawn by the light, as if my body had already decided I belonged here. The hunger. It wasn't just a gnawing sensation anymore. It was a force, a magnetic pull. My veins burned with it, my blood thrumming as if it were made of the very roots of the trees that had been consuming me. I could feel the jungle in every part of me now. Inside my muscles, in the crack of my bones. It was alive in me. Stop, I whispered, barely able to hear my own voice over the pulsing hum in the air. Stop. Fight it. But it was useless. The more I tried to fight, the more the hunger grew. My hands twitched, fingers curling into claws, as if they were seeking out something to grab, something to sink into. The stone beneath my feet seemed to pulse in time with my heartbeat, and I knew that the jungle was all around me. Inside me, it had marked me. I stumbled forward, hands pressed against the cold, smooth stone wall. The carvings seemed to glow now, glowing brighter as I touched them. The symbols twisted and shifted under my fingers, coming alive with motion. A door. Another one. It appeared from the shadows. It was massive. An archway, dark as night, its frame adorned with more of those pulsing symbols. This one was different, though. There was no stone door in the center, no handle to grip. It was open, and beyond it, I could see nothing. Just a swirling darkness. A voice echoed in my mind, soft and distant at first, but growing clearer. Enter. it whispered. Enter and see. I didn't have a choice. Not anymore. The light was fading, and the jungle's power was pulling me toward that doorway. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, to run. But I couldn't. I stepped into the darkness. The moment I did, I felt it. The weight. The jungle had taken full control. It wasn't just inside me now, it was me. The darkness swallowed me whole, but I could still see. The air was thick with the scent of decay. But there was also something else now. Something more primal, more ancient. Presence. A force. It was alive. And it was watching. I was no longer just a part of the jungle. I was becoming it. I stumbled forward, but the path was shifting beneath me. The stone floor was now slick with something I couldn't identify, and the walls around me seemed to pulse with life. The jungle was alive, and it wasn't just an ecosystem. It was something more. The hunger surged again, more intense this time. The roots had spread throughout my body, entwining my organs, my muscles, my mind. They had made their home in me. And then I saw it at the end of the hallway. The light grew stronger. It was no longer pale blue. It was blinding, illuminating the space around me. I had to keep going. My body moved of its own accord now, each step bringing me closer to the heart of the jungle. To the thing that had drawn me here. I emerged into the center of the cavern, and I saw it. The heart. A massive tree, its roots sprawling out in every direction, covering the floor like a twisted web of bone and flesh. The trunk was blackened, scarred, but still alive, pulsing with a faint, unnatural light. The air around it hummed with an energy I couldn't comprehend. The tree was the jungle, and the jungle was alive. I stood there, frozen. As the roots began to move, they surged toward me, wrapping around my body, my legs, my arms, binding me in place. But I didn't scream, couldn't. I could feel the pulse of the jungle in my own chest now, in my blood. I was no longer just fighting it. I had become a part of it. No! I hissed, struggling against the roots, but it was no use. The jungle was inside me. The hunger was inside me. I couldn't fight it anymore. I won't become this. Up next, the voice spoke again, soft and soothing, like the rustling of leaves in the wind. You already are. I felt the world shift. I could feel the jungle in my veins, its roots twisting deeper inside me, feeding on me. But the hunger didn't stop. It was endless, and I could no longer separate myself from it. The jungle wasn't just a place. It was a force, a will, an intelligence that needed to feed. And I had been a part of it from the start. But I wasn't ready to give up. I reached deep within myself, past the hunger, past the roots twisting through my flesh, and I fought. I fought with every ounce of will I had left. I screamed as I ripped myself free from the roots, feeling the agony of it, but also the freedom. I was slipping away from the jungle's grasp, just for a moment, just long enough that I stumbled backward, the ground shaking beneath me. As the jungle roared. It was too late. The jungle had already claimed me. The jungle roared. I felt it in the air, like a pressure building, an overwhelming force rising from deep within the earth. The roots that had once been tangled around my limbs shrank back, recoiling from me as if I were a poison they couldn't swallow. The trunk of the tree before me pulsed, throbbing with a sickening rhythm, like a heart that had been buried too long beneath the ground. I could feel its hunger, and it was mine. It was all that I had left now. Every inch of me felt like it was being claimed, root by root, vein by vein. The jungle was inside me, no longer just a thing outside, but a force that flowed through me, pulling at my thoughts, gnawing at my will. It was a lie. A part of me whispered it through the fog of my mind. It's a lie. You're not them. You're not like them. But another part of me, deeper and darker, wanted to give in, to let the jungle take me, to stop fighting, to become one with the very thing I had been running from. I could feel it now, the terrible truth of what the jungle was. The jungle was a cycle of birth and death, of life and decay. It fed on itself. It didn't care who it consumed. It didn't care what form it took. And I had been part of that cycle from the moment I entered. The roots trembled beneath me, and I thought for a split second that they were calling me. The tree, the heart of the jungle, seemed to beckon me, the shadows dancing along its bark, drawing me closer. I was connected to it now. I could feel it deep within me, just as the jungle could feel me. We were one. I felt the hunger surge again, gnawing, relentless. My stomach twisted, but it wasn't from pain. It was something worse. I could taste it on the back of my tongue. The hunger. It was calling to me, and then the ground shifted. The air became thick, hot, and heavy. The earth trembled underfoot, and I felt the roots move, tensing around me. I was trapped. Again. I stumbled backward, panic clawing at me. But where could I go? Where could I run when the jungle was all around me? There was no escape, no way out. I was done. But just as I thought I would give in, just as I was about to collapse into the suffocating darkness of the jungle's grasp, a sudden surge of clarity hit me. I wasn't alone. The air thickened. Yes, the jungle roared louder. But beneath the roar, there was something else. A subtle sound, a whisper, a presence. I wasn't the first to fall prey to this place. I knew that now. Those who had come before me, those who had become part of the jungle, were still here, trapped just like I was. But not lost. No, they were waiting. Waiting for someone to hear them. Waiting for someone to find them. And in that moment, I felt it. A glimmer of hope. The voice came again. Not from the jungle, but from somewhere deeper, from within me. Fight. It was the voice of the man I once was. The man who had escaped prison, who had dreamed of freedom. The jungle couldn't take me. Not yet. Not fully. I had been running from the wrong thing. The jungle wasn't my enemy. It was my prison. But I could fight it. I could break free. With everything I had left, I pressed my hands against the massive, pulsing trunk of the heart tree. The roots surged up around me, but this time I didn't recoil. This time, I pressed back, pushing against the pull. My hands burned as I touched the tree, but I forced my will to stay steady, to stand tall. I wasn't going to let it have me. The light flared around me brighter, sharper, until it felt like the whole world was burning. The roots retreated, but only for a moment. You are not the jungle, the voice whispered in my mind. You are the force that can break it. The hunger clawed at my insides. It ripped through my thoughts, screaming for me to give in. The roots coiled tighter, but I held on, my fingers digging into the bark. The jungle wanted to devour me, to pull me down into its depths, but I wasn't going to let it. Not now. I could feel the power of the jungle inside me, but I could feel something else, too. The power to choose. With a scream, I tore myself free from the roots. I couldn't fight it all, but I could fight this moment. I could fight this urge. The jungle howled as I stumbled backward, disoriented, fighting to stay upright, but my feet were steady. For the first time in days, my mind felt clear. The roots shrank back as I pushed forward, and the pulsing energy of the tree, the jungle's heart, faded, just for a moment. Then I saw it. Up next, an opening, a crack in the stone that hadn't been there before, a thin sliver of light cutting through the darkness. The path, my way out. I ran. The jungle roared behind me, its rage shaking the ground, but I didn't look back. Couldn't. The light beckoned, just ahead. It wasn't the same as before. This wasn't the same door. This wasn't the same place. This time, the jungle's grip was loosening, and I could feel the weight of it, the weight of everything that had tried to drag me down. Slipping away. I reached the crack, and with a final, desperate push, I burst through. The jungle screamed in fury, but I was free. The darkened, oppressive air behind me faded into the distance, leaving only the cool, open sky and the wind against my face. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe. But as I stood there, on the edge of the jungle, breathing in the crisp air, I realized something. The jungle was still there. It had marked me. It had claimed me. But I had fought it. And that was enough. I wasn't free from it. Not completely. It would always be a part of me now, just as I would always be a part of it. But I had escaped. For now. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The world was different. When I stepped out of the jungle, it felt like I was emerging from a long, suffocating dream. The air was lighter, the sun brighter. I could smell the crispness of the morning dew, hear the distant hum of civilization, a sound I hadn't realized I missed. I was standing at the edge of the jungle, the dense foliage a dark, threatening wall behind me, but I felt different. Lighter in some ways, heavier in others. I had escaped, yes. But the jungle was still inside me. I could feel it, like a pulse that was never quite silent. It throbbed in my veins, in my thoughts, a constant, gnawing presence. The roots had burrowed into me, deep into my flesh, into my mind. And they were not going to let me forget that. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, but my body betrayed me. My hands shook, my legs felt weak. The hunger, that gnawing, insatiable hunger, was still there, buried under the surface. My stomach twisted with the need for something raw, something primal. The urge to feed. I clenched my fists, fighting the overwhelming sensation, trying to push it down, trying to control it. But the hunger was more than just a physical need. It was like a pull, a magnetic force drawing me toward something, toward the jungle, toward everything I had just escaped. I stumbled forward, my feet unsteady beneath me. The jungle, so familiar, so real, was still calling to me, its power still thrumming in my chest. I wasn't sure where I was going. The jungle had taken everything from me, and yet it felt like the world outside didn't even know I existed anymore. I had no one. No one who could understand. As I walked through the dense underbrush, making my way toward the nearest road, my mind raced. Could I ever truly escape? Would I always carry this hunger with me? And then, as I passed through the final line of trees, the world shifted again. The air was still, and for a moment, it felt like everything had gone silent. Then I heard it, a faint rustling, a whisper in the wind. But it wasn't the wind. It wasn't just the jungle. This was something else. My skin prickled as I turned, my eyes scanning the horizon. There was no one there, but I could feel them. I didn't know why, but I knew. I knew I wasn't alone. The jungle had let me leave, but it was still watching me. The people I had seen in the jungle, the ones who had become part of it, who had been twisted into its will, weren't just figments of my imagination. They were real. They were out there, and they weren't gone. The jungle had its eyes everywhere, and it was watching me now, just as it had before. I didn't stop. I kept walking, my feet moving faster as the hunger gnawed at me, my chest tight with panic. But no matter how fast I walked, no matter how hard I tried to push it back, the hunger was there. It was inside me, growing stronger with each step. I could feel it twisting in my gut, clawing at my soul. And then I saw them. At first, I thought they were just figures in the distance, people walking toward me on the road. But as they got closer, I saw their eyes, the same pale, unnatural glow I had seen in the jungle. They weren't human anymore. They were part of the jungle. The hunger surged, and I fought it with everything I had. I wasn't like them. I wasn't a monster. I had escaped. I had broken free. But it didn't matter, because I could feel the jungle in them too. They were just like me. Changed. One of them, a man with wild hair and sunken eyes, smiled at me. His teeth were sharper now, like the teeth of a predator. He didn't speak at first. He didn't need to. His eyes said everything. "You can't run forever," he said, his voice low and rasping, like it came from deep within the earth itself. I wanted to scream, to fight, but I knew what he meant. The jungle would never let me go. Another figure, a woman this time, stepped forward. Her skin was twisted, darkened like bark, and the roots of the jungle seemed to crawl beneath her flesh. She reached out, her hand moving with an eerie grace, and placed it gently on my shoulder. "You're one of us now," she whispered. I felt the jungle surge inside me. The roots were alive, writhing beneath my skin, reaching for me, pulling at my mind. "No!" I gasped, staggering back. But it was too late. The hunger was too strong. The change had already taken root. The man smiled again, his teeth gleaming in the dying light. "You were always one of us," he said, his voice a mixture of pity and amusement. "You just didn't know it." The woman chuckled softly. "We can help you. The jungle has its ways. It has its purpose. I backed away, my breath coming in ragged gasps. But it didn't matter. The jungle was everywhere. Inside me, inside them. It was in the air, in the trees, in the blood of everything that I was becoming it. There was no running from it. No escaping it. The man took a step closer, his eyes gleaming with something darker now. You're one of us. You always were. Come home. The hunger surged again, unbearable now. I could hear the roots calling to me, feel them crawling beneath my skin, urging me to give in. I wanted to resist. I wanted to fight, but it was too late. The jungle had already claimed me. The world around me blurred. I was no longer in control of my body. The hunger was in charge now, pulling me forward, drawing me closer to them. I wasn't fighting anymore. I was giving in. I didn't want to, couldn't, but I was broken. The jungle's pull was too strong. The woman reached out, her hand brushing my face, and I felt the coolness of her touch seep into my skin. Her voice was soft, like the whisper of leaves in the wind. Welcome home. And in that moment, I understood. The jungle wasn't just a place. It was a state of being, a force that consumed, that reshaped. It didn't just take life, it changed it. And now it was changing me. That I was no longer just a man. I was part of something bigger, part of the jungle, part of its cycle, part of its hunger. That I let go. Some say the jungle never lets go, that those who step inside are forever marked, no matter how far they run, that the roots of the forest will always find you, always pull you back, and that once you've been claimed, you can never truly leave. But I wonder now if it's even possible to leave. Because the jungle, it's not just a place. It's a part of you. It grows inside you, takes root in your heart, in your soul. It becomes you. And maybe, just maybe, I was always meant to be a part of it. The end.